back. Wizard of Oz, Chapter 12. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for listening to me read this. I love to read to you, and I'm glad you keep listening. So thank you for being here. Chapter 12, The Search for the Wicked Witch. The soldier with the green whiskers led them through the streets of the Emerald City until they reached the room where the guardian of the gates lived. This officer unlocked their spectacles to put them back in his giant box, and then he politely opened the gate to our friends. "Which road leads to the Wicked Witch of the West?" said Dorothy. "There is no road," answered the guardian of the gates. "No one ever wishes to go that way." "Well, then how are we to find her?" "Well, that will be easy. When she knows that you are in the country of the Winkies, she will find you, and she will make you all her slaves." "Perhaps not," said the Scarecrow, "because we intend to destroy her." "Oh, well, that's different," said the guardian of the gates. "No one has ever destroyed her before, so I naturally thought she would make slaves of you, as she has done all the rest. But take care, because she is wicked, and she is fierce, and may not allow you to destroy her. Keep to the west where the sun sets, and you cannot fail to find her." They thanked him and bade him goodbye, and turned towards the west, walking over the fields of soft grass, dotted here and there with daisies and buttercups. Dorothy still wore the pretty silk dress she had put on in the palace, but now, to her surprise, she found it was no longer green. It was pure white. The ribbon around Toto's neck had also lost its green color, and it was as white as Dorothy's dress. The Emerald City was soon left far behind, and as they advanced, the ground became rougher and more hilly, for there were no farms or houses in this country of the West, and the ground was untilled. In the afternoon, the sun shone hot in their faces, because there were no trees to offer them any shade. And so that night before night, Dorothy and Toto and the lion were quite tired, and lay down upon the grass and fell asleep, with the woodman and the Scarecrow keeping watch. Now, the Wicked Witch of the West had but one eye, yet that was as powerful as a telescope, and she could see everywhere. So, as she sat at the door of her castle, she happened to look around and saw Dorothy lying asleep with her friends all around her. They were still a long distance off, but the Wicked Witch was angry. She was angry to find them in her country, so she blew a silver whistle that hung around her neck. At once there came running to her from all directions a pack of great wolves. They had long legs and fierce eyes and sharp teeth. "Go to these people," said the witch, "and tear them to pieces." "Are you not going to make them your slaves?" said the leader of the wolves. "No," she answered. "One is of tin and one is of straw. One is a girl and another a lion. None of them is fit to work, so I might as well tear them into pieces." "Very well," said the wolf, and he dashed away at full speed, followed by the others. It was lucky the Scarecrow and the woodman were wide awake, and they heard the wolves coming. "This is my fight," said the woodman. "Get behind me, and I will meet them as they come." He seized his axe, which he had made very sharp, and as the leader of the wolves came in, the Tin Woodman swung his arm and chopped the wolf's head completely from its body, so that it immediately died. As soon as he could raise his axe, another wolf came up, and he also fell under the sharp edge of the Tin Woodman's weapon. There were 40 wolves, and 40 times a wolf was killed, so at last they all lay in a heap before the woodman. Then he put down his axe and sat beside the Scarecrow, who said, That was a really good fight, friend." They waited until Dorothy awoke the next morning. The little girl was quite frightened when she saw all the great pile of shaggy wolves, but the Tin Woodman told her all the story. She thanked him for saving them and sat down to breakfast, after which they started again on their journey. Now, this same morning, the Wicked Witch came to the door of her castle and looked out with her one eye that could see far off. She saw all her wolves lying dead, and the strangers still traveling through her country. That made her more angry than before, and she blew her silver whistle twice. Straight away, a great flock of wild crows came flying towards her, enough to darken the entire sky. And the Wicked Witch said to the King Crow, "Fly at once to the strangers, peck out their eyes, and tear them to pieces." The wild crows flew off in one great flock towards Dorothy and her companions. When the little girl saw them coming, she was afraid, but the Scarecrow said, "This is my battle. Lie down beside me and you will not be harmed." So they all lay down upon the ground, except for the Scarecrow, and he stood up and stretched out his arms. And when the crows saw him, they were frightened, because birds are always frightened by scarecrows, and did not dare to come any nearer. But the King Crow said, "It is only a stuffed man. I will go and peck his eyes out." The King Crow flew at the Scarecrow, who caught it by the head and twisted its neck until it died. And then another crow flew at him, and the Scarecrow twisted its neck also. There were 40 crows, and 40 times the Scarecrow twisted a neck, until at last they were all lying beside him on the ground. And then he called his companions to rise, and they went upon their journey. When the Wicked Witch looked out again and saw all of her crows lying in a heap, she flew into a terrible rage and blew 3 times upon her silver whistle. Forthwith there was heard a great buzzing in the air, and a swarm of black bees came flying towards her. "Go to the strangers and sting them to death," commanded the witch, and the bees turned and flew rapidly until they came where Dorothy and her friends were walking. But the woodman had seen them coming, and the Scarecrow had decided what they should do. "Take out my straw and scatter it over the little girl and the dog and the lion," he said to the woodman, "and the bees cannot sting them." And the woodman did this, and as Dorothy lay close beside the lion and held Toto in her arms, the straw covered them entirely. The bees came and found no one but the woodman to sting, so they flew at him and broke off all their stings against his tin without hurting the woodman at all. And as bees cannot live without their stings, they were broken, and at the end, and that was the end of the black bees. And they lay scattered thick about the woodman like heaps of coal. And then Dorothy and the lion got up, and the little girl helped the Tin Woodman put the straw back into the Scarecrow again. And he was just as good as ever. So they started their journey once more. The Wicked Witch was so angry when she saw her black bees in little heaps like fine coal that she stamped her foot and tore her hair and gnashed her teeth. "Urgh!" And then she called dozens of her slaves, who were the Winkies, and gave them sharp spears, telling them to go to the strangers and destroy them. The Winkies were not a brave people, but they had to do as they were told, so they marched away until they came to Dorothy. And then the lion gave a great roar and sprang towards them, and the poor Winkies were so frightened that they dropped their spears and ran back as fast as they could. When they returned to the castle, the Wicked Witch beat them with a strap and sent them back to their work, after which she sat down to think about what she should do next. She could not understand how all of her plans to destroy these strangers had failed, but she was a powerful witch, as well as a wicked one, and so she soon made up her mind how to act. There was, in her cupboard, a golden cap with a circle of diamonds and rubies run all around it. This golden cap had a charm. Whoever owned it could call 3 times upon the winged monkeys, who would obey any order they were given, but no person could command these strange creatures more than 3 times. Twice already the Wicked Witch had used the charm of the cap. Once when she had made the Winkies her slaves and set herself to rule over their country. The winged monkeys helped her to do this. The second time was when she had fought against the great Oz himself and driven him out of the land of the West. The winged monkeys had also helped her in doing this. Only once more could she use the golden cap, for which reason she did not like to do so until all of her other powers had exhausted. But now that her fierce wolves and her wild crows and her stinging bees were gone, and her slaves had been scared away by the cowardly lion, she saw there was only one way left to destroy Dorothy and her friends. She took So the wicked witch took the golden cap from her cupboard and placed it upon her head. She stood upon her left foot and said slowly, "Epe, pepe, kake." Next she stood on her right foot and said, "Hilo, holo, halo." After this she stood upon both feet and cried in a loud voice, "Zizzy, zuzzy, zik." And now the charm began to work. The sky was darkened, and a low rumbling sound was heard in the air. There was a rushing of many wings, a great chattering and laughing, and the sun came out of the dark sky to show the wicked witch surrounded by a crowd of monkeys, each with a pair of immense and powerful wings on his shoulders. One, bigger than the others, seemed to be their leader. He flew close to the witch and said, "You have called us for the third and last time. What do you command?" "Go to the strangers who are within my land and destroy them. Destroy them all, except the lion," said the wicked witch. "Bring that beast to me, because I have a mind to harness him like a horse and make him work." "Your command shall be obeyed," said the leader. And then, with a great deal of chattering and noise, the winged monkeys flew away to the place where Dorothy and her friends were walking. Some of the monkeys seized the Tin Woodman and carried him through the air until they were over a country thickly covered by sharp rocks. Here they dropped the poor woodman, who fell at a great distance down to the rocks, so he lay so battered and dented that he could neither move nor groan. Others of the monkey caught the Scarecrow and with their long fingers pulled all of the straw out of his clothes and out of his head. They made his hat and boots and clothes into a small bundle and threw it into the top branches of a tall tree. The remaining monkeys threw pieces of stout rope around the lion and wound many coils about his body and head and legs until he was unable to bite or scratch or struggle in any way. And then they lifted him up and flew away with him to the witch's castle, where he was placed in a small yard with a high iron fence around it, so he could not escape. But Dorothy they did not harm at all. She stood with Toto in her arms, watching the sad fate of her companions, and thinking that it would soon be her turn. The leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her, his long, hairy arms stretched out, and his ugly face grinning terribly. But he saw the mark of the good witch's kiss upon her forehead, and stopped short, motioning at the others not to touch her. "We dare not harm this little girl," he said to them. "She is protected by the power of good, and that is greater than the power of evil. All we can do is carry her to the castle of the wicked witch and leave her there." So carefully and gently, they lifted Dorothy in their arms and carried her swiftly through the air until they came to the castle, where they set her down upon the front doorstep. And the leader said to the witch, "We have obeyed you as far as we are able. The Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow are destroyed, and the lion is tied up in your yard. The little girl we dare not harm, nor the dog she carries in her arms. Your power over our band is now ended, and you will never see us again." Then all the winged monkeys, with much laughing and chattering and noise, flew into the air and were soon out of sight. The wicked witch was both surprised and worried when she saw the mark on Dorothy's forehead, because she knew well that neither the winged monkeys nor she herself dare hurt the girl in any way. She looked down at Dorothy's feet, and seeing the silver shoes, began to tremble with fear, because she knew what a powerful charm belonged to them. At first the witch was tempted to run away from Dorothy, but she happened to look into the child's eyes and saw how simple the soul behind them was, and how the little girl did not know of the wonderful power the silver shoes gave her. So the wicked witch laughed to herself and thought, "I can still make her my slave, because she does not know how to use her power." Then she said to Dorothy, harshly and severely, "Come with me, and see that you mind everything I tell you. If you do not, I will make an end of you, as I did of the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow." Dorothy followed her through many of the beautiful rooms of the castle until they came to the kitchen, where the witch made her clean the pots and kettles and sweep the floor and keep the fire fed with wood. Dorothy went to work, with her mind made up to work as hard as she could, because she was glad the wicked witch had decided not to kill her. With Dorothy hard at work, the witch thought she would go to the courtyard and harness the cowardly lion like a horse. It would amuse her, she was sure, to make him draw her chariot whenever she wished to go drive. But as she opened the gate, The lion gave a huge roar and bounded at her so fiercely that the witch was afraid and ran out and shut the gate again. "If I cannot harness you," said the witch to the lion, speaking through the bars of the gate, like a coward, "I can starve you. You shall have nothing to eat until you do as I wish." So after that, she took no food to the imprisoned lion, but every day she came to the gate at noon and said, "Are you ready to be harnessed like a horse?" And the lion would answer, "No, and if you come into my yard, I will bite you." Now, the reason the lion did not have to do as the witch wished was that every night while the woman was asleep, Dorothy would carry him food from the cupboard in the kitchen. After he had eaten, he would lie down on his bed of straw, and Dorothy would lie beside him and put her head on his soft, shaggy mane. And they talked of their troubles and tried to plan an escape. But they could find no way to get out of the castle, and it was constantly guarded by the Yellow Winkies, who were the slaves of the Wicked Witch, and too afraid of her not to do as she told them. The little girl had to work hard during the day, and often the witch threatened to beat her with the same umbrella she always carried in her hand. But in truth, she did not dare to strike Dorothy because of the mark on her forehead. The child did not know this and was full of fear for herself and for Toto. Once the witch struck Toto a blow with the umbrella, and the brave little dog flew at her and bit her in return, right on the leg. The witch did not bleed where she was bitten because she was so wicked that the blood inside of her had dried up many years before. Dorothy's life became very sad as she grew to understand that it would be harder than ever to get back to Kansas and Aunt Em again. Sometimes she would cry bitterly for hours with Toto sitting at her feet and looking at her face, whining dismally to show how sorry he was for his little mistress. Toto did not really care whether he was in Kansas or the Land of Oz, so long as Dorothy was with him. But he knew the little girl was unhappy, and this made him unhappy too. Now, the Wicked Witch had a great longing to have for her own the silver shoes which the girl always wore. Her bees and her crows and her wolves were lying in heaps and drying up, and she had used up all the power of the golden cap. But if she could only get a hold of the silver shoes, then she would give her more power than all the other things she had lost. She watched Dorothy carefully to see if she ever took off her shoes, thinking she might steal them. But the child was so proud of her pretty shoes that she never took them off, except at night and when she took her bath. The witch was much too afraid of the dark to go dare into Dorothy's room at night and take the shoes, and her fear of water was greater than her fear of the dark, so she never came near when Dorothy was bathing. Indeed, the old witch never touched water, nor ever let water touch her in any way. Oops. Excuse me. But the wicked creature was very cunning, and she finally thought of a trick that would give her what she wanted. She placed a bar of iron in the middle of the kitchen floor, and then, by her magic arts, she made the iron bar invisible to the human eyes, so that when Dorothy walked across the floor, she stumbled over the bar, not being able to see it, and fell full length. She was not much hurt, but in her fall, one of her silver shoes came off, and before she could reach it, the witch had snatched it up and put it on her own skinny foot. The wicked woman was greatly pleased with the success of her trick, for as long as she had one of the shoes, she owned half the power of their charm, and Dorothy could not use it against her, even if she had known how to do so. The little girl, seeing that she had lost one of her pretty shoes, became very angry, and said to the witch, "Give me back my shoe." "I will not," retorted the witch. "It is now my shoe and not yours." "You are a wicked creature," said Dorothy. "You have no right to take my shoe away from me." "I'm going to keep it just the same," said the witch, laughing at her. "And someday I'm going to get the other one from you, too." This made Dorothy so angry that she picked up the bucket of water that stood nearby as she had been doing the mopping on the floor, and she dashed it over the witch, wetting her from head to foot. Instantly, the wicked woman gave a loud cry of fear, and then, as Dorothy looked in wonder, the witch began to shrink and fall away. "What have you done?" she screamed. "In a minute I'm going to be melted away." "Oh, I'm very sorry, said Dorothy, who was truly frightened to see the witch actually melting like brown sugar before her eyes. Didn't you know that water would be the end of me? Asked the witch in a wailing, despairing voice. Of course not, answered Dorothy. How could I know that? Well, in a few minutes I'm going to be all melted, and you will have the castle to yourself. I have been wicked in my day, but I never thought a little girl like you would ever be able to melt me and take away my wicked deeds. Ah, here I go. And with these words, the witch fell down in a brown, melted, shapeless mass and began to spread over the clean boards of the kitchen floor. Seeing that she had really melted away to nothing, Dorothy drew another bucketful of water and threw it over the mess. She then swept it all out the door. After picking up the silver shoe, which was all that was left of the old woman, she cleaned and dried it with a cloth and put it on her own foot again. And finally, being at last free to do as she chose, she ran out to the courtyard to tell the lion that the Wicked Witch of the West had come to an end, and they were no longer prisoners in that strange land. More soon. Love you much.